Superman has been seemingly killed. He's been bombarded with kryptonite, using it as a way to defeat his latest villain, Chained. A villain that is being manipulated by two villains known as Graft and Farm, who are trying to work against Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is currently in prison, and he's given his entire corporation to Superman so that he can create Supercorp. But in the battle against Chained, Superman needed to use kryptonite to stop him, and that led to Superman falling unconscious. We now bring you issues 9 through 12. Lois sits by Superman's unconscious body, reading letters to the people of Metropolis, as she holds one up. This one's from Jamie. She begins to read the kid's words about how Superman helped find their lost dog and fly the ambulance for his brother to get to the hospital. Next week is his 10th birthday. I know he'd love to see you again. We miss you. Lois reads, breaking down in tears. Get well, Superman. She gasps before leaning forward, crying on her unconscious husband. But she's Lois Lane. She pushes past this, reaching into the large mail sack, pulling out another letter. Okay, get it together, Lois. This one's from Sean, she says as she begins to read another. Meanwhile, the rest of Supercorp are doing everything that they can to help Superman, while they also continue to build a cell on Stryker Island to hold the Chained. Lena Luthor, against her father's wishes, has come to work at Supercorp, believing that it is the best way to spite her father. Over at the Daily Planet, everything is chaotic as Jimmy hides in Lois's office, questioning why she hasn't been to the paper in several days. Vacation? Now, Miss Lane? Jimmy asks quietly over the phone, hoping the rest of the office doesn't hear him. Clark and I just needed a few days of sun. Beaches and sand, you know? Lois tells him and tells Jimmy that he's in charge and to make sure to pick out the front page for tomorrow's edition. I gotta go. Surf's up, Lois calls before hanging up the phone. She then sighs and starts to turn around. You're a worse liar than me, Superman gasps as he gets off of the solar bed. Remind me to write Jamie back and tell him that I remember him and his brother. I need to write him a birthday card. Clark says, but Lois isn't listening. She launches across the room, giving the man she loves a hug. They stand there for a moment, just being with each other, before they're interrupted by Mercy walking into the room. You two should be more careful, Lois. I let you in here as an old favor, but I can't let the others connect the dots. That would be tragic. Mercy says, and Lois tries to make an excuse, but Mercy waves her off, explaining that she has known the Clark Kent secret identity since Lex didn't factor her into the identity bomb that wiped everyone's memory. I really appreciate your help here, Mercy, but it's time I got back out there and found Farm and Graft. Superman says, but Mercy shakes her head, pointing out that Superman still needs to heal from kryptonite poisoning. If he should be infected again, he could die. Superman nods, reaching down for his tattered cape. I understand your worries, I do, but we don't have time. When I was fighting the Chained, he talked about other people who have been wronged by Luthor. I know who Farm and Graft's next target is. Marilyn Moonlight. They walk out of the room with Mercy suggesting that Superman use the combat armor that Lex developed for him. Superman regards the green and purple suit. Maybe, but it needs an update. I have my own ideas. I just need some tools. Meanwhile, Marilyn Moonlight is riding her spectral steed across the night sky of Metropolis, stopping at a nearby rooftop and regarding her city. Beautiful, isn't it? Graft says, suddenly standing next to her. Moonlight draws her spectral pistol, taking aim at the villain. I'm not playing your games with Lex, Graft. But the scientist waves off the multicolored clawed hand. Marilyn, you have nothing to worry about. You're one of us! If you work with me, you can finally get revenge on Lex and the city that turns you into this ghostly curse. Graft suggests, but she shakes her head. I remember you and your forked tongue. Nothing but a snake oil salesman, just like your mama. The conversation is then interrupted when Superman lands between them, now clad in the power armor. Back in his cell, Lex raises an eyebrow. Did you really re-establish comms so that I could hear you show off? He asks, suggesting that he take out Graft quickly. Superman looks at the villain. Whatever issue you have with Luthor, you can take it up with me. You've messed with too many lives and it stops now. Leave Moonlight alone. Superman orders, but Moonlight steps around the Man of Steel, suggesting that she doesn't need the hero's help. I can handle Graft all by my lonesome. Graft smiles at the two heroes, and his wheelchair begins to transform beneath him, becoming a spider-like battle platform. It's been a long time since I've stepped into the arena of battle. Graft laughs, his limbs now tipped with kryptonite, and he slashes at Superman, but the armor protects him from the harmful radiation. Activate the EMP and end this quickly, Lex orders, but Superman explains that he disabled it. This armor should protect me, not hurt others. Superman tells Lex, and Lex sighs, shaking his head. I built you a tank and you transformed it into an ambulance, he says, with Graft continuing to fire kryptonite blasts. But the armor protects Superman and he charges in, punching Graft and destroying the battle platform. As he falls to the ground, Graft holds up his clawed gauntlet and smiles. The kryptonite claw suddenly glowing and a blast of energy shoots out, hitting Moonlight in the stomach. She screams as he transforms into light and both her and Superman disappear. When the light fades, Graft looks almost shocked. Fascinating, he says softly. Back in his cell, Lex is shocked by Superman's sudden disappearance, and Mercy confirms that the Man of Steel is nowhere on Earth. Meanwhile, somewhere in the past, the Metropolis Expressway pulls away from the bustling, expanding frontier town. On the train, a young Graft and Farm sit with their mother, who informs her hired vigilantes that her sons are geniuses and someone has been trying to steal their latest invention. She pats the briefcase next to her, and Nighthawk and Cinnamon promise that they'll keep the family safe. I hope so. He's here, Farm says, glancing out of the window, seeing the outlaw riding up on the train before leaping off and climbing aboard. Nighthawk and Cinnamon quickly rush through the train, climbing onto the roof, drawing their guns. Reach for the sky, Nighthawk orders, Cinnamon glancing at the red and blue-clad outlaw. Wait a second, what kind of bandit doesn't carry guns? She questions, and the outlaw's eyes blaze red. The vigilantes are then forced to drop their guns as they become red hot. Sorry to do that, partners. I don't like guns. Now, if you'll kindly excuse me, I'm robbing this here train, Superman says with a smile as he tips his hat to the pair. It's a short time later that Superman and Moonlight are riding across the plains of America. Whatever Graft hit Moonlight with, the energy sent them both back in time. Clark is shocked by what happened and now lives his life in a Western like his father used to watch. The pair ride until they see smoke and they come upon a wagon train that's been destroyed, bodies strewn about. Looks like a robbery gone wrong. Mostly women and children, 2 men. I count just 1 rifle for the camp. They didn't stand a chance, Moonlight says, and Superman nods, bowing his head. Moonlight continues to search, finding strange burn marks on the damaged wagons. These were not made with any bullets that I know of, Moonlight says, and Superman nods as he returns to his saddle, pulling out a shovel. Still healing from his kryptonite poisoning, he isn't quite at full strength. Lasers. I have an idea who did this, and we'll find the lowlife. But first, we gotta make sure these folks get some peace. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, the Tera Man, a time-traveling outlaw, sits at a poker table and tells how he fought against a wagon train full of armed men. But he's interrupted by Graft and Farm's mother, who holds up a wanted poster about a certain Kryptonian. I paid you to come to this town and help me with my problem. A villainous man stole a new creation from us, and my precious boys want it back, the woman says, and Tera Man smiles before taking a sip of his beer. Don't worry, you old crone, there's no place in the country where a bandit can hide from me. I'll find him soon, Tera Man says before drinking. But the Batwing doors suddenly swing open and Superman strolls in. Don't bother. You're done terrorizing this town, Tera Man, Superman says, the time traveler staring at him for a moment, his mind working, and he suddenly snaps his fingers as he recognizes Superman. Boy, howdy, I ain't seen you in a hog's life, brother. Tera Man laughs, holding up his laser pistol, quickly explaining that he thought it would be fun to hang out in the Old West for a time. Enjoy myself for a bit without anybody finding out. Superman glares at him. You killed people. Tera Man nods his head, whirling his guns. I've killed a lot of people. You're gonna have to be specific, he says with a shrug, and Superman steps forward, preparing to take Tera Man in, but the outlaw shakes his head, aiming his blaster. You're powerless, ain't ya? I can tell. The Superman I know would have flown in here like a bullet and taken me out, but you walked in. I'd wager you're trapped here. You see me and my time machine as your ticket home. You need me, Tera Man says with a smile, but Superman just smirks. It really sounds like you're just hiding here like a no-good chicken, Tera Man, he says quietly, and Tera Man nods, stating loudly that the town is not big enough for the two of them, and calls Superman out. Shortly, they meet in the streets, standing 10 steps apart for their duel. Where's your piece? Tera Man asks, his hand already hovering over his own blaster, but Superman shrugs. I don't need one. Tera Man just smiles, proclaiming that they draw on 3. He counts to 1 before drawing and firing, laser fire ripping across the street, impacting Superman. When the smoke clears, the Man of Steel is unfazed, his shirt and poncho merely tattered. Huh? I guess all the sun did me some good, Superman says with a smile as he floats up into the air, Tera Man staring at him in fear. I missed this, Superman says, but Tera Man knows that the Man of Steel will do anything to protect the townsfolk. He whirls around and begins to fire his laser at the townsfolk, forcing Superman to move to protect everyone. You might stop them all, but I'll be on my way, Tera Man shouts as he calls his time-traveling bike. You can stay trapped in the Wild West. I'll just jump back in time another 10 years and spend that time killing as many people as I can before we meet again, Tera Man calls as he begins to race off, but he discovers that he isn't going anywhere. He turns to see Marilyn Moonlight behind him, her lasso wrapped around the time machine. You ain't going nowhere, she calls out, aware that a certain female bartender who lives in the old Metropolis is watching them. In moments, Tera Man is captured and locked in the town jail. Later, Superman and Moonlight are riding out of town, with the Man of Steel promising to come back and get the outlaw soon. Moonlight pauses for a moment, tipping her hat to the bartender, who smiles back. Did you just inspire yourself? Superman asks as the pair ride off into the sunset. Moonlight smiles and nods, explaining that she remembers seeing the spectral hero when she was younger, and it inspired her to become a costumed hero. She even fought against the likes of the younger Farm, Graft, and their vile mother. People began to call her the spirit of Metropolis, and she was the city's first hero. But she got older and gave up the costume, eventually dying peacefully in her bed surrounded by her family. Until someone took that away from me. They brought me back and turned me into a ghost. More science than supernatural, Moonlight says, promising Superman that she'll find out how they did it and break her curse so that she may return to the other side. Using the time machine, the pair then return to the present, with Superman promising to help Moonlight. We'll find whoever brought you back and put you back to peace, Marilyn, Superman promises, and as they return to the present, the sun affects Moonlight once more, and she fades away. With that done, Superman hefts the strange device that he stole from Graft and Farm in the past and returns to Supercorp. He's hoping to find Lois and the others there, but he finds the building strangely deserted. As he calls out to anyone, Lena Luthor comes around the corner. Superman, you have to run, she shouts, and a gas grenade bounces around the corner, flooding the hallway with kryptonite gas. Superman begins to struggle and something lashes out, striking him, knocking him to the ground. He falls to his knees, looking up as Farm, Graft, and the Chained and an armored person stalk out of the green gas. I known this day would come since I was a little boy. Now our Lex Luthor Revenge Squad is missing one crucial element. You, Superman, join us and watch Metropolis fall, Graft says with an evil smile. Graft leans over the Man of Steel with a smile, explaining that every move they made was to test Superman's limits and resolve, altering Superman's enemies' powers with kryptonite radiation, freeing the Chained, forcing Superman to question Luthor at every turn. The Chain begins to move, wishing to finally kill Superman, but Graft stops him. We need him to join us. Killing Lex would be way too easy. We want to destroy everything that Lex cares about, but the challenge is that Lex cares for so little. What is the best way to hurt him? His company, Metropolis, his legacy? Graft says with a smile, turning his gaze upon Lena Luthor. A few hours ago, Lena had stood in front of Supercorp, asking the hologram of Luthor that was designed to help Superman about herself. LL01 begins to spout off information about Lena. That she is the daughter of Lex and Contessa, that she was given to Brainiac 13 in exchange for advanced technology. She was taken into the future, but returned to the present as an avatar for Brainiac, and then was rescued by Superman and returned to Lex, who had all traces of Brainiac removed from her body and was placed on a private island under the care of her grandmother, Leticia Luthor. Recently returned to Metropolis, Lena is currently an employee of Supercorp. LL01 finishes, and Lena stares in surprise, believing that the hologram would have access to Luthor's files that might tell her more about her father's feelings towards her. But Leticia comes in behind her, explaining that the reality is that Lena scares Lex. And not just because you represent his greatest sin, but because you are also so much smarter than my son, Leticia says, explaining that the men in the Luthor family have always feared those that are greater than themselves. Lena then thanks her grandmother for the kind words, but is interrupted by Mercy, who announces to the Supercorp employees that Superman has gone missing with Marilyn Moonlight and they need to find out where he is. Lena rushes off to help Mercy, leaving Leticia by herself, while Mercy and Lex run diagnostics on Superman's suit, hoping to find some trace of him. Lena begins to study how Graft and Farm seem to have access to so many different varieties of kryptonite, and Lois charges into the room demanding to know what happened to her husband. Alarms begin to sound in the Supercorp building, and Mercy glances at the alarms. Oh no. Wherever Superman is now, we need him to stay there, she hisses as she points at Farm and Graft entering the building. Supercorp, activate safe room procedures now. Clear out, drop whatever you're doing and go. Mercy shouts over the building's comms as she realizes that the two villains are heading for the Chain's temporary cell in the lower part of the building. Lois turns on her. Why wouldn't we want Superman here, Mercy? And Mercy glances at her as her arms transform into weapons. The last time we saw Superman, he had severe kryptonite poisoning. Graft has a kryptonite claw, and if it comes in contact with Superman, it could kill him. We can't let that happen, Mercy says with determination. Suddenly, the wall explodes behind them, throwing the three women to the floor. From the smoke and destruction, someone wearing Lex's armor stalks into the room. Mercy is down, Graft. Supercorp's systems will soon be ours, the person says over the comms, and the armor turns, putting Lois behind an energy field. Dad, why are you doing this? Lena shouts at the armored figure, but Lex is still on the Supercorp comms from his cell. What are you talking about, Lena? He shouts, and Lena looks up in surprise as the armored criminal removes their helmet, revealing the face of her grandmother. I'm taking back what's mine, Lena. Lex didn't start this company, I did. Then he stole it from me, embarrassed me, and sent me to some island to babysit his little brat. The least he could have done was kill me. She snaps angrily at her granddaughter. Lena looks up at her grandmother in shock as the woman raises an energy gauntlet at her, but Lena jumps to her feet, rushing out of the room, retreating down the vast hallways of the Supercorp building. She rounds a corner to find Superman standing at the entrance chamber, looking for anyone. Superman, you have to run! She shouts out, trying to warn the Man of Steel, but the gas grenade drops, filling the room with kryptonite gas. Graft moves over the struggling Superman, ordering him to join the criminal team in their revenge against Lex. Never! Superman snaps, as the Chained has his chains snake around his body, but Graft merely smiles, holding up his kryptonite claw. You misunderstand me, Superman. We expected resistance. He holds up the claw, explaining that his brothers have discovered a way to create synthetic kryptonite and tested the effects on Bizarro. We harness the kryptonite in ways that we've never seen before. Each color has a special quality. He holds up the red kryptonite, making Superman very angry. Red begins to fill Superman's eyes, and in a blur of emotion, he is gone, ripping Lex out of his cell on Stryker's Island, bringing him back to Supercorp, dumping him in front of the Revenge Squad. Graft claps his hands in success. It's time Superman pays for what he's done. Not just to us, but to the world. Lena tries to pull her grandmother away, shouting for Superman to fight against the Red K's effects. Stop it, Lena. This is for the best. Your father has had this coming for a long time. Graft orders Leticia to leave her granddaughter alone. We have other engagements, Graft reminds her. But Leticia nods, leaping into the air, leaving to execute the next step of their plan. Lena then rushes to Superman, trying to stop the hero, but Lex smiles, getting to his feet. Graft, just as when we first met, you still lack the ability to see the whole board of our game. Lex says simply, explaining that Graft and Farm have made a crucial mistake in their plan. Graft sneers at Lex. Oh really? Enlighten me, he says, and Lex shrugs. No one wants an angry Superman, and you're assuming he's only angry with me. Lex says, fear suddenly dawning in Graft's eyes. Oh no, he whispers, and Superman turns his red eyes on the villain, firing a blast of heat vision that destroys the kryptonite claw. He whirls around, backhanding Farm into a nearby wall. The Chained moves to join the fight, but Superman grabs him by the throat, slamming him through the floor. Superman then whirls again on him. Luthor, you deserve to die! Superman shouts as he speeds forward, grabbing Luthor by the shirt, lifting him into the air. Lex nods, holding out the shard of the kryptonite claw that he grabbed. Not today, Lex says as he stabs into Superman's chest, dropping the Man of Steel. Lena rushes to his side. What did you do, Father? She shouts in surprise, but Lex tells her that he did what he needed to do and had to move quickly to save Superman's life. It doesn't matter, it's too late, Graft calls to them, his hand still smoking. We told you before, this is not about killing Lex. Lex only cares about himself. His legacy, so we've unleashed something that will ruin the Lex name forever. Graft motions to the window and Lena rushes to it, horrified to see Leticia floating above the city, releasing a kryptonite gas upon all of Metropolis. Kryptonite radiation can impact a human over time. What we've created is a new kind of kryptonite that also affects humans in the same amount of time as it does Superman. Graft laughs. Superman struggles to his feet, demanding to know why the brothers even did this, but Graft shakes his head. I'm flattered, Superman, but we're not the architects of this plot. Lex closes his eyes, bowing his head. Superman, it was not Graft or Farm's plan at all. This was my plan. I created it years ago, and now all of Metropolis will pay for my genius. Lena helps Superman up as he struggles to his feet. I need to get out of here. Stop, Leticia. Superman gasps, but Lena shakes her head. If you do, you will die, she reminds him. Graft turns on him, shouting that Superman should have joined the Revenge Squad. You rejected our offer, and now you will pay. Your fate is sealed. But Lex is suddenly there, punching Graft in the face, knocking him out. He stands over the villain, now clad in his Superman armor. God, did I ever monologue that much, Superman? Superman nods. Sometimes, he admits. Lex moves towards the window, explaining that he will deal with Leticia and the kryptonite gas, because it'll instantly kill Superman. But the same goes for you, Superman points out, and Lex nods as his armored helmet slides over his head. It will take a bit longer, just enough time to save some lives and potentially stop my mother. This is all my fault, so if I die today, so be it, he says as he leaps out, flying away. Lena runs to the window, staring after her father. We can't let him do this, she says, and Superman nods, promising that they're going to help Lex. He gets on the Supercorp comms, ordering any employees remaining in the building to report to the main office. Dozens of employees arrive, and Superman floats before them, explaining that they need to find a way to save the city. I've been told that you're the finest minds in the world. I believe that together, we could find a way to reverse what Farm, Graft, and Luthor did to create this new kryptonite gas attack. Now go! Superman tells them. The Supercorp workers don't even hesitate, rushing to start working. As Lex flies through the city, he comes back on the comms, explaining that Superman will have to reverse engineer his work and then come up with a way to negate the gas's effects. Superman nods, explaining that they've already started working on that. So tell me the truth. What really happened with Graft and Farm? Superman asks as he begins his work, and Luthor sighs, finally beginning to tell the tale. Lex explains that he first found kryptonite in Smallville, and he knew that he could use it to create something amazing, something that could help mankind. Eventually, he came to Metropolis, where he took on the role of the city's protector, fighting against the likes of Farm and Graft until he discovered that they were also working with kryptonite. Eventually, the trio came to an understanding and they began to work together, sharing their research and their plans. But Lex eventually turned on the brothers, believing their goals did not align with the best way to use what they had discovered about the kryptonite. I did what I needed, discarded the brothers when they were no longer useful, Lex says as he rounds a corner, finding his mother waiting for him. Sounds familiar, just like what you did to me, she bellows as the gas continues to spew out of her suit. When you came to Metropolis, I took you in. I showed you the company that I was building, and you took it from me! But Lex shakes his head. You lacked vision, Mother. Leticia roars in anger, firing a blast of energy at Lex, knocking him away. Back at Supercorp, Superman and the others have figured out that if they can return the kryptonite to its original state before Farm and Graft's tampering, they should be able to do so with the gas as well, which means that it won't affect normal humans and they can use the toxin filter that Dr. Shawn created and was pitching to Superman a few days ago. Mercy stares at the data. We need a massive battery that can drain the radiation, she muses, and Superman nods, explaining that they already have one. A little time later, they have hooked Parasite up to the machine and are allowing him to siphon the altered radiation from the kryptonite. How are you feeling, Rudy? Superman calls from nearby, concerned for his villain. But Parasite smiles, continuing to eat. This is the best meal I've ever had! He calls out with joy, and Mercy shouts from the console, telling Superman that it is in fact working. Mr. Luthor, we have it! We can reverse what you did to the kryptonite, Mercy says over the comms as Luthor continues to fight against his mother. Eliminating the threat in front of me is my first priority. I can't let Mother escape, he says as he punches her away. But Superman gets on the comms telling Lex that saving lives is the most important thing. Your priority right now is saving lives, not taking down your mother. We'll be sending the data to your suit's computer. You should be able to send out a wave of energy into the radiation clouds that will negate the kryptonite and disperse it, Superman tells him. Lex pauses for a moment. Luthor, are you a changed man or not? Superman demands to know. Lex finally agrees, flying up, leaving his mother behind. Above the city, he uses the data to create a pulse that sends out waves, destroying the kryptonite clouds. But Leticia isn't done. She switches her suit's weapons to maximum energy and prepares to destroy her son. Back at Supercorp, Lena rushes to LL-01, asking if he's able to shut down the suits remotely. Yes, but it will shut down Lex's suit as well. The hologram reports and Lena smiles. Oh, do it. Back in the city, before Leticia can take the final shot, both suits depower and both Luthors fall out of the sky, plummeting to the city below. And a blur of red and blue, Superman is there to catch them both. Gotcha, he says with a smile. Superman drops Leticia off with the authorities, and the people of Metropolis cheer for both Lex and Superman. Later in his cell at Stryker's, Superman explains to Lex that Farm, Graft, and the Chain have now all been imprisoned. Mercy raved about your actions at Supercorp. I'm glad that you were finally able to embrace what I've offered you, that you understand that we can do great things together. Superman nods. Good people work at Supercorp, Luthor, so I'll do it for them. He says, but he wants to know if there are any more secrets or lies that Lex is keeping from him. Lex ponders for a moment before looking up. Not to my recollection, he says smoothly. Back at the Daily Planet, Clark and Lois look over the city. And you believed him? Lois asks, and Clark shrugs, explaining that Luthor's heartbeat didn't skip a beat. Plus, I admit, I liked running Supercorp today. Let me stretch muscles I don't normally get to. She shows Clark today's Daily Planet, which Jimmy chose to headline as Lex Luthor Saving the City. Not only did Jimmy not burn the Daily Planet down, he actually got the paper out. Though it's not the headline that I would have written, she says with a smile, admitting that it might be time for Jimmy to move up in the world. As the couple decide that maybe they need to take a real vacation, Clark admits that one thing still bothers him. He can't figure out why Graft and Farm suddenly decided to make their move. What restarted their game with Lex? Why now? He questions. Somewhere in the vastness of space, Brainiac's ship is now speeding towards Earth, leading into the next big event, Brainiac's invasion. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Superman. Now, with everything on the channel, we have issues 1 through 12 of Dawn of DC Superman leading into the Brainiac event. And I'm really proud that we were able to pull it off and that you guys enjoyed it. So I hope you guys continue to enjoy it. Stick around, and we'll be doing the Brainiac event very soon.